Well, I had my eye on this piece of wood for quite a long time. The first time I tried to get the piece of wood, I spoke to the park manager and he said he had asked the principal park person, so he phoned him up and told me that the principal park person said no because he wanted to keep all the wood in the park for park furniture. So I left it, but the more I looked at the piece of wood, the more I realised that there might be a piece in there that would be enough. But also there were other problems that I could see, and I didn't know how extensive it all was inside. There was a lot of bracket fungus. But I mean, I followed my instincts and basically took the driver's advice and decided to try and get the piece of wood. So I left it for a while, and the next year I tried again, and basically this time I told him that the piece of wood was useless and that it was just too big to climb on for kids. So he said he'd phone the principal park person again and put in a good word for me, and he said he'd phone me back. Then I decided to get as much help as possible and went across the park to a spot where there's another big tree that I knew could talk because it creaked and groaned in the wind. So I went to this tree and asked the tree if it could help in any way, somehow get in touch with the building and affect the principal park person's decision. And then I got on a bus, and 10 minutes later the phone rang, and it was the park manager. He said that I could have a piece of wood.
Yeah, breast cancer almost. Definitely got a tumour there. I think it was all these things, various attempts from the dark side to disrupt the sculpture process. I think they went back to where the wood came from and probably saw the sculpture in the future and freaked out and went back in time and fired all these things at it, bracket fungus and tumours, and Phaser was fending it all off, and I think he managed to. And that's why it's all so close somehow.
all the sculptures are part of a story, and the story is a story about the experiences that I've had, because I've had specific experiences that are quite unusual. First of all, I made Brody, and Brody's a time traveller character, but he's also my spirit guide. So all the sculptures are spirits, and Brody was the first sculpture that I made because he's a spirit that I've been working with for a long time, because he's my spirit guide. I made him ages ago. Basically when I was 14, that's when I first clocked him. Once I'd finished him, I had another one of these experiences, which was quite an intense one because a lot came out of it. A whole series of diagrams came out of it, and basically a whole series of new invisible entities came out of it as well. Basically the female invisible entity that was one of the characters during this experience was much larger than life, and I strongly felt that she was like really big and from the Amazon or somewhere else, not from Wales, where this tribe that I'm making now is from. It was through a journey with that place that I came up with these two ideas for these spirits. But so yeah, I had this experience, and this is where the female idea, because I suddenly realized that this entity that I was dealing with wasn't actually Brody's partner, that it was something much more ferocious and angry, and Brody needed something much more tranquil and peaceful, and this is where the actual female idea is divided into two separate sculptures. There was always going to be a female idea, naturally. This was going to always be Brody's partner. But because Brody's kind of archetypal male, this was going to be an archetypal kind of female idea, which I could never resolve until I'd finished Brody. They've kind of described themselves to me. That's how I've worked out these sculptures. At least the wood carving hasn't, but I definitely had that experience with the large metal sculpture, who kind of guided me along the path of the wood carving sculpture. Blake divided the world into the two different things, and the ones are devouring, and it's actually like, it's like half the world, according to Blake. It is the devourer, and it's just going to always be that. It doesn't have its own energy, and that's why it consumes other energies. But I'm also saying that there's a link between their dimension and our dimension that gives us clues of its existence that people don't actually see either. I mean, people don't see the clues, and they're actually visible to the naked eye. And that's what I'm describing as the ultra body field. Babe, the big tree spirit dryad that I encountered in 2001 in July, was with the entities that were on about. They were all on about. I was trying to find out what the black hole was, and they were trying to, get me to work it out so that I could make a report about what they were doing and experiencing. The diagrams all came about during the experience that I encountered the invisible tree entity in. So it's still quite the same experience, and they're all on about the same thing. Whatever's coming from me and what the diagrams are about is the black hole. And so this is trying to attach in some way to, or basically to use the hollow hill as some kind of nest to actually take over the planet. But it all happens in a hallucination, and it goes through time back into the past, and it sort of follows evolution, and it's quite a dangerous notion, and well, just personally, because it's like bordering on psychosis anyway, so one always has to be careful about going down that road. But I've been down it and come through the other side anyway, so it doesn't matter anymore. And talk about it or write about it and think about it. It's just, it's just always there. And in that hallucination, the trees are very old and they're just ones that got away. The Druids worshipped trees or worshipped the entities that lived in them, basically, because they were at the same time worshipping the goddess, and the goddess was the earth. And the trees are like the way the earth connects with the kind of atmosphere at least, but the tree spirits would connect with the universe that way. And it's the way the goddess was connecting with the actual universe through these things called trees.
Per monti e per valli, bellissima glori, già corrono valli, le ninfe pastori, già lieta festosa, ha tutto ingombrato la schiera amorosa, il seno del prato, già lieta festosa, ha tutto ingombrato la schiera.
If we're something and there's the nothing, it's just the nothing trying to become the something by consuming it, and all that it becomes is still nothing, because it's just nothing in the beginning and it's going to be nothing in the end. There are people running around on this planet that don't have souls, they've got black holes, and they're not human. And they're destroying the place. And their job is to consume the whole thing as much as possible, while it's still there. And that's what we're up against. And I mean, I think there were only 36 of them personally, and it, basically revolves around the diagrams and my hallucinations about the whole thing, because I've hallucinated how it is, and where they're coming from and how it works. And, 36 males, and that's enough to create hell or whatever they want to create. But what I'm saying is that what the problem is that we, this is where the diagrams come in, and everything that's it's like whatever's coming for me is coming for the whole planet, the black hole itself. But that's not a problem because it's so far away, we can hardly see it. But the thing is, I'm saying that there are things that aren't human that are here, and they're the ones that are destroying the whole place. And they're the ones that are creating the war. They're the ones that are not stopping the forests from getting cut down by subsidizing the countries and saying, look, you've got a valuable asset that we fucking need as a planet, so let's save it. Here's money. To save the fucking forest. Let's pay them to save the fucking forest. It's not happening. It's like there's someone in place that's not doing that. I can't save it from where I'm sitting. All I can do is make a dryad and say, look, but I can't save I can't stop them from cutting, but someone can. There's someone who can actually stop them from cutting down the rainforest, and they're not. Their job is to not stop them from cutting down the rainforest. And they are responsible, and they are not human. What they've got are black holes instead of souls, and that's all they're interested in. Creating a black hole. Where there's, life. Tree spirits still exist and still need trees to live in anyway. I wouldn't like to have to deal with a dryad having experienced what they are. I'd rather just be on their side. Well, I did the wax. I did the wax for the hip replacement and the control panel, and that all went very smoothly. The molds and everything worked out, and then eventually took that to the foundry to hand in to be cast.
The next stop is
Maybe an end in itself is the destruction of things. And maybe that's its end. It needs to destroy instead of create. I'm trying to make people aware through the diagrams and the sculptures and basically the whole body at work. I'm trying to make people aware of what we're up against.
When I first told my friend Richard the hallucination that I had in 1995 during the first breakdown, which I hadn't told many people and hadn't told him for years, it was about 4 years later. And I told him this hallucination that I had, and he immediately reached for this book and read me a small section out of it, which just totally summed up the hallucination. I could feel like electric currents kind of coursing through my veins, like I had wiring in my body or something. It felt a bit like the Terminator, and I just felt like I was dying. But yeah, that's also just before they gave me any medication for the first time. They kind of left it to just evolve, to see where it went, so they could probably understand it. I'm not sure why they didn't give me anything, but they wouldn't give me sleeping pills either. By the time they gave me a sleeping pill, I didn't trust it and didn't take it. But yeah, it was basically just like having this hallucination of the metal skull and not being able to lie down and not being able to walk around, just wanting to lie down and just wanting to fall asleep and pass out basically. But you know, the minute you lie down, you're up on your feet again and can't sleep for sure. And I was barely breathing. And when I told him that, he reached for this book and read me the section on dismemberment and renewal, which is quite detailed and quite grim, but it did fit the hallucination quite well. The story goes that the soul of the candidate gets left on a pine branch for 3 years, or gets put in a house for 3 years. And then the little bit extra that he read me was that after initiation, the shaman will find a woman will find him, or he'll find a woman who will have big breasts that he'll suckle till he feels better, and she'll nestle him until he feels better, and then she basically sends him packing. And part of it's got to do with dismemberment and renewal, but the other bit's got to do with breasts, and that's what because we're doing a breast today, I thought it might be relevant to mention that.
Well, the hip replacement turned out very well. I had to take it back to the foundry and get it patinaed. I asked Phil to make it look like lichen, and he said that he would dab the patina ring on to get that effect, and he had a way of putting the liquid onto the brush and then shaking as much of it off as possible and then dabbing it on. And this created a kind of dappled effect, which has other things in it happening that look more like lichen even. But the dappled effect is quite lichen-like, and it also looks like skin. And that's important because it could be the surface of Angelina coming through a hole in her dress that makes that form. There were a lot of cracks from the wood seasoning, and I was very lucky that it seasoned so well in my favour. And the cracks did whatever they did, that worked. But there were quite a few, and that needed to be sorted out, especially on her skin areas, because I left the cracks on her dress and added more for effect. Well, the wedging was very successful. It's just brilliant because it's the same wood as the actual sculpture, just made into wedges and kind of feathered into the cracks, so that it wedges and creates a tight fit which you can't see. I guess all that's left to kind of mention a bit about Angelina and where she's from and her environment and where she lives, because she lives there for sure in this environment, which is a forest or a wood, depending on which way you want to look at it now. It's probably more like a wood, not a forest anymore. But the point is that it's there and she lives there, but she doesn't live in a house because her home's gone. And this is the thing about the droids that I'm making. They're both homeless because they're trees that they lived in are cut down, and that's what I see, and I think it was done 1,000 years ago. That's when Christianity started, and that's when Charlemagne cut down the tree, the sacred tree of the pagans. And this is what I think Angelina is. I think Angelina is the spirit that lived in this tree and doesn't live in it anymore, but something else does now. Something moved in. Thanks, for the hell. And Wales is just it's beautiful, but it's too painful for me to look at those tree stumps for so many, 500 years or something. I didn't know, no one would tell me what the hell was going on, like they were all trying to figure it out. And I was saying, well, what is this place? Where are we? And they were like, well, all their ideas and ways of getting out of actually saying what they, already knew, which was like, this is exactly like, we don't know, we could be in another dimension, and just don't ask us anymore. I mean, no one actually said to me that we could be in another dimension at all. I just assumed that maybe they were avoiding trying to tell me that. It could be something weird. There's definitely a shift in the atmosphere that you experience. While you're walking there, it's nothing. And suddenly, as you get over the bowl of whatever the cliff is going down into, the top of it, then you hear you don't just, you get it from all different angles, The sounds, really get to you after a while, especially at night, when you can't see if there's anything making them. Well, maybe that's why you think you're hearing them, I'm not sure. But you think you might be hearing things because you can't see if there's anything there or not.
yeah, you know, this reminds me of my dining room table. Exactly the same color. It's just much darker because it's so old.